Parshas Shlach, since from Parshas Valoischa and on, it's kind of depressing, Chumash Bamidbar, because time and time again, Klal Yisrael fails. Last week we had the Messiah, then we had Moshe, and we had Aaron and Miriam doubting Moshe Rabbeinu's integrity, and now we have the Meraglim that most of our week's parsha deals with, and this is something that changed the whole mahalach of Klal Yisrael's entry into Eretz Yisrael. Instead of entering in 3 days, they were stuck in the Midbar for 40 years. The Yotzei Mitzrayim themselves didn't enter Eretz Yisrael b'chlal; they died in the Midbar, and even the next generation that did enter Eretz Yisrael, according to Chazal, because of the Chet HaMeraglim, there was the Gzeres HaGolus that they won't stay in Eretz Yisrael. Eventually, we were kicked out of Eretz Yisrael, and all that is rooted in the Chet HaMeraglim. So how did it really happen that the Dor that experienced the 10 Makkos, Kriyas Yamsuf, Rasa Shifcha Layam, Asher Leiro, Yecheskel Ben Buzi, Matan Torah Ato Hareisel Adas, Ki Hashem Hu Elokim Ein Oid Milvadoi. Chazal referred to this generation as the Dor Deya. How did it happen that they failed so miserably? Yeah, the truth is that in Pshutei Shel Mikra, even what happened is not clear, because our parsha begins with Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Lema Shlach Lecho Anoshim V'Yosuru Eseretz Canaan. We get a clear impression that this was a tzivui of the Rabbeinu Shalom that the Meraglim should be sent Losur Esa Oretz. But in Chumash Devarim, in Parshas Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu presents a totally different picture. He says, "Vatikravun elai kulchem, vatoimru nishlacha anoshim lefanenu, nishlacha anoshim lefanenu, v'yachberu lanu es haaretz, v'yoshivu oisonu davar, etc. Vayitav hadavar vayitav be'enai hadavar ve'ekach mikem shnei masor anoshim ish echad lashevet," and so on. So in Parshas Dvarim, we're talking about an initiative that came from Klal Yisrael that found favor in the eyes of Moshe. There's no mention b'chlal of the tzivui of Shlach Lecha Anoshim. So Rashi in the beginning of this week's Parsha says, Shlach Lecha L'da'atcho. Ani eini mitzaveh lecho. Im tirtze Shlach. So there is no commandment. Shlach Lecha means L'da'atcho. If you want, you can send. It's an asinis rishus. Im tirtze shlach. Lefi shebo Yisrael v'omru. Nishlecha anoshim lefanenu. Kemo shenemar vatikruvun elai kulchem. U'moshe nimlach b'shchina. Omar, the Rebbeinu Shalom said, Ani omarti lohem shehi toiva. Shenemar, it says in Parashat Shemois, Ale eschem me'orni Mitzrayim el eretz aknani el eretz zovas cholav u'dvosh. Chayehem shani noisen lohem mokoim litois b'divrei hamiraglim leman lo yirshuha. So the fuller story is what appears in Chumash Devarim. Yeah, it really was their initiative. The Shlach Lecha in our parish is not a tzivui as it sounds. It's just an asinis rishus. Shlach Lecha le'datcha. And this permission was given because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you know what, you're not sure. You're not sure if it's really good. Chayehem shani noisen lahem mokoim litois. Laman lo Yeshua. So how are we supposed to understand this approach? I mean, the Rebbeinu Shalom's approach, just because they wanted to check Eretz Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu already prepares them. He sets them up for failure. I mean, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a Rachum V'Chanun. Why would the Rebbeinu Shalom really do this? You know that in the Tefillos of Kabbalah Shabbos, we say Mizmoirei Tilim, beginning with L'chuna Ranino, Mizmor Tzadik Hey, and we say several kapitlich that are all talking about the future redemption. Because, Erev Shabbos is the time that we enter Shabbos, and somehow that connects with the Yom Shekuloi Shabbos Menucha L'Chayei Ha'Elamim, which is going to be La'asid Lavai, and therefore we say these mizmorim. So the minhag is that the Shliach Tzibur at the end of each mizmor, he signs off with a kind of festive tune. We understand that as far as all the other mizmorim are concerned, but the first L'chuna Ranana, it ends with a psukim Arbaim Shana Okut Bedor. For 40 years I quarreled with a generation. Okut Bedor V'oimar Am Toyei Levav Heim. There are people of a wayward heart. V'heim lo yodu derachai. Asher nishbati ba'api im yevoyun el menuchasi. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a shvuah that they will not enter his resting place, meaning they will not enter Eretz Yisrael. That's what the capital of L'chuna Ranana signs off with. So, this is not positive at all, to say the least. So, what's the pshat that we almost sing this in Kabbalah Shabbos? What is there to sing about? It's a terribly sad thing. When Klal Yisrael saw that the Mitzrim are chasing after them and the Yam is in front of them, they panicked. As we know, the pasuk says, "Vayiru ma'od, vayitzaku b'nei Yisrael el Hashem, vayomru el Moshe, hamibli ein kvarim b'Mitzrayim l'kachtonu lomus b'midbar," and so on, until Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, "Al tiro hisyatzvu u're'u es Yeshuas Hashem asher yaseh lochem hayom." So the Ibn Ezra over there in Parashat Shelach says, "Hisyatzvu u're'u ki atem lo tasu mulchama." You just have to stand still. Raktiru es Yeshuas Hashem asher yaseh lochem hayom. Says the Ibn Ezra, Yesh l'tmoya. Eich yira machna godol shel sheish meis elef ish meharod f'machreim. Why would 600,000 men, why would they be afraid of the roidfim achreim? V'loma lo yilochamu al nafsham v'al b'neim. Why wouldn't they wage war against their attackers? Hatshuva ki hamitzrim hoyu adoinim li Yisrael. The Mitzrim were their masters. V'zeh hadoir hayoytzim mi Mitzrayim. Lomad mina urav lisboil oil Mitzrayim v'nach shoy shvela. Yeah, they were brought up as slaves, and therefore they had a nefesh shvela. The eich yuchal ato lihilochem im adoinov. How can they now fight against their masters? V'hoyu Yisrael nirpim ve'eino milumodim lemulchama. They had no training. Haloitira ki amolek bo ba'am muot. Lulei tfilas Moshe hoyacholish es Yisrael. And that's because they had a slave mentality and they lacked the courage to stand up against their attackers, and also the skills they lacked. V'Hashem levadoi, shehu oise gedolos, v'loi niskenu alilos, sivev, shemesu kol ha'om hayotzim miMitzrayim aschorim. That all the people that left Mitzrayim, that generation that were once slaves, they all died in the Midbar. Ki ein b'hem koyach li'ilochem b'knanim. Because they wouldn't have the strength, the courage, the strength to fight against the Knanim. At shekom dor acher, dor hamidbar, until a new generation, the dor hamidbar came up. Sheloi ro'u golus, they never experienced golus. V'hoisol hem nefesh gevoya. So what's amazing is that the Ibn Ezra is ignoring Mefurish Psukim in our parsha and in several other places that the Gzeira on the Dor HaMidbar was a consequence of the Chet HaMeraglim. He's saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is lo yiniskenu alilos, that the Rebbeinu Shalom has, plans and ways beyond what we understand, that he set it up in a way that they should die. It sounds as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought about the Chet HaMeraglim in order that he should be able to have the Dur Hamid, the Dur Yotzei Mitzrayim die. I mean, what in the world is that supposed to mean? He's totally ignoring the Chet HaMeraglim, which is Mefurish in the Psukim, that's the reason that the Dur Yotzei Mitzrayim did not enter Eretz Yisrael. The Rambam in the Moreh Nevuchim goes the same way, in much more barichis. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim Chelek Gimel, Perek Lamed Beis, Perek Lamed Beis, yeah. The Rambam says that he's talking about karbonis. The Rambam's shita is that karbonis were not really a lechatchila. It's kind of a compromise with the nature, with human nature, where Yidden were in the past oivdei avodah zarah, and that was the only form of worship that spoke to them, and therefore to totally remove them from karbonis would not work, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them a way to channel that urge for worship. The Rambam says, and let me read to you what he says, that there are many things in the Torah that are this way. You can't abruptly go from one extreme to another. It's impossible for a person to abandon everything that he's accustomed to abruptly. Shelach Hashem Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hasholim L'titeinu Mamleches Koyanim V'Goy Kodesh B'Yidiyosei Yisborach K'Moshe Kosav U'Bir Ato Reisol Adas V'Yadas Hayom Shevoisa V'Lehinosein La'avoidosoi K'Moshe Kosav U'La'ovdei B'Chol Avavchem V'Ama V'Avadetem Es Hashem Elokeichem V'Oisei Ta'avoidu V'Hoya HaMinig HaMefursim, says the Rambam, Ba'olam Kuloi Shehoyu Oz Regilim boy, v'ha'avoida ha'koileles asher godlu aleh, lahakriv mine balei chayim behicholoi sahem. That they used to bring balei chayim as sacrifices for the avodah zorah. Asher hoyu mamide behem atzlomim, v'leishtach avois lehem v'lekate lefneim, etc., etc. And therefore, loy gozro chachmosoi v'tachbulosoi hamavueres, sheyitzavenu lahaniach mine ha'avodah sahem kulam olevatlam. He didn't tell us to abandon it completely. That would be something that we wouldn't be able to handle. Because a person, his nature is always leans, falls back on what he's accustomed to. Anyway, he goes on and on. That it's an impossible thing. Yeah. Then he says, I know that you're going to run away from what I'm saying. It will be difficult for you to understand what I'm saying. You're going to ask me in your heart, detailed mitzvahs, and v'husam lohem zmanim, with zmanim, they have times, b'yom tzavois, b'yom v'lo b'laylo, and etc., and nechel shnei yomim, v'laylo echad, l'yom v'laylo. And all the details of Hilchos HaKorbanos. How is it possible? V'heim kulam bilti mechuvanim la'atzmam, aval heim mipnei dovar acher. How is that possible? Ki'ilu heim tachbula she'osa Hashem lonu lahagia el kavanosei harishono. But he says, ve'ezeh moineya hoya etzloi. What held back the Rebbeinu Shalom? He says, litzavos lonu kavanosei harishono, to tell us what he really wants. V'yitain bonu yichayles lekabla, and he should give us the ability to accept that. And he wouldn't need to raise us slowly from where we're at and allow us to fall back on what we're accustomed to a certain extent? Why couldn't he just change us? Listen to my answer that will remove from you this illness. והוא שכבר בו בתורה כמו זה העניין בשווה, והוא אמורי, ולא ינוחם עליכם דרך ארץ פלישתים, כי קרבו. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Penny Enochim Oam, B'ra'isa Mulchama, V'shavu Mitzrayim. And therefore, Vayasev Elokim Esam, Derech Hamid B'yamsuf. So he says, U'kamoi shehei save Hashem oisam min haderech hayishora, asher hoisam mechuvenes tchila. I mean, the derech ha-mechuvenes tchila would be the straight way. It's not even a shortcut. It's the regular way. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was hey save oisam min haderech hayishora, asher hoisam mechuvenes tchila mipnei yiras, because he was afraid, so to speak, masha loy hoyu yichaylim l'savloi, that they wouldn't be able to handle it. They would panic and they would want to go back to Mitzrayim, and therefore he took them al derech acheres in order that he should be able to carry out his plan. Cain tziva b'zayis hamitzvah shezacharnu in the karbonis, because it's like a vayaseh v'lokim v'loy nacham in the straight way. Because they wouldn't be able to take it, just like those Yidden that left Mitzrayim wouldn't be able to take standing up against the Mitzrayim. See, he says, and now he says, Ki kemoisha ein beteva ha'adam sheyigdal al meleches avdus b'chomer u'b'levenim v'hadoim lahem. Yeva achakach yirchatz yodav l'shaitim v'lechlucham v'yilochem im yelidei ha'anok pisayim. Can't be that a guy should get up from the bricks and wash his hands off and go fight with Yelidei Anok. Yeah? Ki ein betivoy sheyigdal al minim rabim meha'avoidois u'maisim murgolim shekvar notu eileihem hanefoshois ad sheshovu kemuskol rishon v'yanichim kulam pisam. He can't just drop all the forms of worship that he was accustomed to. U'kemoisha hoya michachmes Hashem lahosei v'oisam b'midbar. That the living in the midbar and going in the midbar for a long time. That makes people rougher and tougher and stronger. Of somebody that grows up spoiled. I mean, is a rach halevav, is meek-hearted. A new generation that never experienced avdus. Because zehoya b'mitzvas eloikiyos al yidei Moshe Rabbeinu al pi Hashem yachnu al pi Hashem yiso es mishmeres Hashem shomoru al pi Hashem b'yad Moshe. Cain bo zeh achelik min haTorah b'tachbul eloikis. Same thing is with the karbonis. And then he talks about schar v'oinish. Why doesn't the Rebbeinu Shalom just make us want to do the right thing? The Ezer Moineya hoya etzloi loses ritzoin ma'isa avoda sherotza v'richu ka'avodas Hashem osam teva mushrash bonu. Why didn't he just make it natural for us to want to do the right thing? Why does he have to dangle in front of us schar v'oinish instead of just making us want to do the right thing? Yeah. Anyway, v'hatshuva al elu hashe'elois hasholosh v'chol mashu miminam shuva achas koilelis. And here the Rambam says, Avada, the Tanakh is full of nisim, miracles. The Rebbeinu Shalom changes nature, but he only changes nature of the cosmos, but he doesn't change the nature of man. He says, Teva ach teva b'nei odam lo yishaneu Hashem klal al tzad ha'moifes. Umipnei zeh ha'shoresh hagodol omar mi yitein v'hoyo levavam zeh. It's as if the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, I wish they would have this heart all the time. I mean, I wish he could just make it be. But no, that's the principle of Hakoil bidei shamayim chutz miyiras shamayim. So the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world, but he doesn't run human life. Human life is our choice, our choice. Umipnei zeh be'er ha'mitzvah v'ha'azhara v'ha'gmol v'ha'inish. And he says, it's v'lo amarti ze mipnei shani mamin sheshinui teva kol echad mibnei adam kosher l'Hashem Yisrael. It's not, don't think that I think that it's hard for him to change the nature of man. It's harder to change the nature of man than to change the nature of water. Ach hu efsher, v'noiful tachas hayecholos, he can do it. Elo shehu lo yirotza klal lasei zeh, v'lo yirtzeu la'olam. He never wanted and never will want to do that. Kifi hapinois hatoriyos. V'ilu hoyo mirtzoinoi. L'shanois teva kolishim b'nei odom l'mashi yirtzeu yisalam and aishahu. Hoya bottle shlichus anaviyim v'nesinis haTorah. There would be no value for Torah. And he goes on. So here again, the Rambam totally omitted the fact that the Dor Yotzei Mitzrayim died in the Midbar because of the Chet HaMeraglim. The Yidden spent 40 years in the Midbar because of the Chet HaMeraglim. And he says basically the same thing as the Ibn Ezra, that they weren't ready. They weren't ready to enter Eretz Yisrael, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu kept them in the Midbar. So it must be that Avada, the oynish for the Chet HaMeraglim isn't an oynish of nekama. It's not that the Rebbeinu Shalom is taking revenge on us. The Yidden, with sending the Meraglim, and the Meraglim themselves, by saying what they said, Efes ki az ha'or ma'yoshev ba'oretz, right? So they actually revealed their level, the level that they're at. And that necessitated a process through which Yidden will be able to, on their own, mature and reach a level of readiness to go into Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, the Shelach Lecha is l'datcha. If Yidden are asking for it, and you, Moshe Rabbeinu, think that they need it, then send them a Meraglim, in spite of the consequences, because that's the way the Rebbeinu Shalom is machanachos. It's he doesn't force us to be on a level that we're not. He works with the level that we're on, and so often that the Ibn Ezra and the Rambam are not contradicting the Pshutei Shel Mikra, that it was because of the Meraglim, but it's the oimek of the Pshutei Shel Mikra, because the pshat is the Meraglim is a symptom of where we were at in terms of our emunah, in terms of our betochen, in terms of our confidence, in terms of our courage, and therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't convert our heart with a oisul moifis, but rather wants to give us the opportunity to grow on our own step by step. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't do nisim in the Teva Ha'adam. HaKol b'dei shamayim chutz mi'yirei shamayim. And the Rebbeinu Shalom has a lot of patience, and that's the Arboim Shana Oked B'Dor. You know, the pasuk says in Yeshaya, "V'amarto b'yoyim hahu, oidecha Hashem ki onafta bi, yoshoiv apcha usenachameni." So on that day you will say, on that day of the ultimate redemption, you will say, "Oidecha Hashem, I thank you, Hashem, ki onafta bi," which means that you were angry with me. Now your wrath has subsided. But the pshat is, what are we thanking for? We're thanking also for the fact that he was angry with me. Because if he wouldn't care enough about giving me the opportunity to grow, he wouldn't get angry with me. He would just make me be what I should be, regardless of whether I am up to it or not up to it. The Anaftabi, which is the Arboim Shana Oked B'Dor. And again, the golus of Vayisa Yodoi Lahem Lahapil Oisam Bagoyim Vilazeroisam Ba'arotzois, that came as a consequence of the Chet HaEgel, of the Chet HaMeraglim. All this is part of the Anaftabi, which is part of our educational process. In other words, in the Kabbalah Shabbos of Leil Shabbos, when we are toyim the tam of the Yom Shekuloi Shabbos, when we will not only believe that it's all for the good, but will actually experience how it's all for the good, then we take a sing the Arboim Shona Okud Bedor Va'oimar Am Toye Leva V'hem Lo Yodu Derochai Asher Nishbati Ba'api Im Yevoinu Monachasi. Because the Rebbeinu Shalom wants, we should undo the Toye Levov. And he gives us the opportunity to undo the Toye Levov and to come to a level of Yodu Derochai. So we're thankful that he didn't rush the process. Because if he would rush it, so I mean, we would never grow. So we see all the Yisurim as growing pains. The even though in the physical sense, there's no real source for the fact that there are pains that are associated with growing. But in the spiritual sphere, it's definitely true that there are growing pains. And without the pain, there's no growth. And the growth requires pain. So that's also true. I mean, in chinuch, we mechanech our children, there's a mahalach of activation and there's a mahalach of education. I mean, in the way of activation, I mean, there's immediate results, but it's more often than not possible that it has no real meaning. It's only with patience you can show a way that the child should develop the right ideas, the right wants on his own. Yeah, sometimes you have to enable error in order that one should be able to experience trial and error, right? I mean, it's possible that it shouldn't be taken to an extreme. I mean, if a child is jumping into the street, he has to be stopped, right? It's like everything in life. I mean, it has to be done with moderation. But in principle, it's important to remember that just like the Malamed Torah, La'amo Yisrael, chose to work with our nature and not to change our nature, so also we need to work with even our own nature and allow others and allow ourselves to develop in the right direction one step at a time. And that's also the reason that we shouldn't despair, because we have to recognize Okoiv halev mikoil va'onushu miyedaenu. The human being is very complicated. Yeah, and it doesn't happen in one day. But every small step in the right direction is a great achievement, right? So therefore, it gives us a tremendous chizuk. So it's true, the entire Sefer Bamidbar is full of downfalls and setbacks, but from those failures, we became Yidden. We became what we are only through all these failures. And we're not over yet, obviously. Yeah, we're still engaged in this avoida. Yeah, Rabbi Say, I'm saying Dvarim Pshutim, but it's like all Dvarim Pshutim, it's hard to live by. But that's what it is. Yeah, Rabbi Say, I want to wish you a good Shabbos.